Hi, I'm Fred Borges, and I was in a couple of Nathan's films.
Hello, my name is John Smihula, and I'm an old friend of Nathan's. And I had roles, as you notice, in all of the films: Weasels Rip My Flesh, The Long Island Cannibal Massacre, They Don't Cut the Grass Anymore, and Vermilion Eyes.
That film was just awesome. It took us a long time to shoot it. That was like 6 months, where the other film we did in about a month. And Cannibal Massacre was, I think it's still today. I have to ask Nathan, but I believe it's still the favorite one of the favorite of his movies with the fans out there. And not saying because of me, because it just was. It is a wild film. It's a really wild film.
We were both very much interested and intrigued by the characters that Clint Eastwood played in films: Dirty Harry, The Man with No Name, and so on. So we talked about how it would be great if we were to make a film someday, and I could play a Clint Eastwood type character, and that's what I did in Weasels Rip My Flesh and in the Long Island Cannibal Massacre. Although, of course, in the Long Island Cannibal Massacre, my Clint Eastwood character has a twist. He's not only Inspector Cameron, but he's also Bruce. So he has a dual personality, which makes it a very interesting film because during the course of the film, Inspector Cameron chases himself essentially, because he's not only the good guy, he's also the bad guy. When he decided to turn Cameron into a dual personality character, he told me, before he even told me, he said on the phone, "John, there's been a change, and it's absolutely brilliant." And then he would say things like, "I can see it now on the big screen. Nathan H. Schiff, super genius. I like the way that rolls out." And turning Cameron into a dual personality character, I think, was a stroke of genius. When I think back to the Long Island Cannibal Massacre, a couple of things come to mind. One is the chainsaw scene. As far as I know, this is the most effective chainsaw scene ever photographed. And I think back to how insane we were. Now, Nathan might say, well, the chainsaw doesn't look, on screen, the chainsaw looks a lot closer to Fred's chin than it actually was. But still, Fred is impaled on the stake, and I come up with the chainsaw as the monster with the silly mask on, wearing the green clothes. I come up as the monster with this chainsaw, and he's got a big piece of turkey on his, like a big piece of turkey breast on his chest, and I'm carving this turkey like it's Thanksgiving dinner. And so Fred's chin is right here. And I look back and I sort of tremble when I think back to what we did as 19-year-olds, something that we would never do now. I also have to commend Fred for his courage, his bravery to actually be there, impaled on the stake. Blood is already poured out of his mouth. And this chainsaw, if you look closely, you can see some fear in his eyes, because he's glancing down at the chainsaw like, oh my God, this thing is too close to my chin. It could remove part of my face.
A lot of people ask me, they said, were you really afraid when you did that chainsaw scene? When I told them that we were using a real chainsaw? To tell you the truth, I wasn't afraid at the time, but when I look back at the film today, I realize how nuts it really was. I don't know, I was just so into getting into the character and to do the most effective scene possible that I wasn't even thinking of this chainsaw running on me. And reality, when you look at it, it was quite close to my neck. And, we only did one test on a log to make sure it wouldn't go through the material. But it was something else.
Fortunately, though, nothing happened, and I had sort of like a death grip on the chainsaw. I was squeezing it as tight as I could, because I didn't want it to catch like a piece of gristle or fat or tough meat in the turkey and jump up and hit him in the chin. So that was the chainsaw scene, and I thought that was very effectively done. Of course, we had endless problems with the chainsaw.
I mean, I was afraid. The chainsaw was one of these ones that really can cut through. It was a large chainsaw. And I was, the scene before, I get picked up and then thrown down and impaled on a spike. And I had to like put a pillow, and I was like leaning on this spike. And when he throws me down, and I love doing dying scenes, that's my favorite. And I spit all the blood out of my mouth. And it came all falling down, and everybody was like, people were like wanted to scream out, but they knew we were filming. They had to be quiet. And that was great. That was a lot of fun. And that chainsaw was. Then he comes off with this chainsaw, starts cutting. He cuts off my fingers, and then Nathan insisted that my tongue get ripped out. And I said, "No, come on. Yes, we must do that." So after a few arguments, of course, Nathan won out, and I had to put an actual a cow's tongue from, and we would use, most of the meat was from the butcher. I mean, we go to the butcher, we'd say, "Oh, you have intestines and stuff," and one time we even used we were trying to use real sheep's blood, but it was like totally disgusting and it turned bad.
The other interesting thing about that scene, if you look closely, I also play, of course, Bruce. And Bruce, at that point in the film, he had been shot a couple of times, I think, and stabbed, and he was in bad shape. When we think he's dead, but at one point he comes crawling into the frame, and in the background you see Fred with the chainsaw, and the monster before him. Now, if you look closely, the monster looks different from what you've seen before and what you will see next. I couldn't play the monster in that scene, obviously, because I am crawling up into the frame, and eventually I crawl up behind Fred and bite his leg. During that shot, Fred's girlfriend is playing the monster. So you see the monster. If you look closely, you see the monster moving, and the monster looks very effeminate. The monster is no longer this hulking monster who's wreaking havoc on Fred. The monster is going like this and moving back and forth, very feminine motions. So the monster has a quick personality change, and then once I'm no longer in the frame as Bruce, then they go back to playing the monster, and I pick up Fred and throw him onto the stake, and that's that.
I'll never forget that we had this one character, and we call him Winston. Winston was the father of the monster of the Long Island Cannibal Massacre, and we weren't exactly sure what we're going to have as far as his voice. We had the dialogue, which was really wild because it was Old English, and he would speak in these and thous. So I still remember the dialogue to this day. And I picked up a vase because I do this deep voice, like this. And we said, well, how are we going to make this more interesting? So I said, why don't I speak it into like a vase? And I could speak like this. So then he goes, okay, do a line. Father, I need to know what you're thinking, what you're seeing, feeling.
Is it this wish to know what I am? Is it the wish to know what I am?
Well, right at that point, and as you can hear, still to this day, it wipes out my voice. It took us 3 days to do that because it really scratches your voice box.
To speak like that?
Well, oh, that hurts.
Is it because my flesh is unlike others? Is it because my face offends the eye of the beholder?
Once we did that, he was like, that's it, that's gonna be the monster, that's the monster voice. So, yes, I played 2 parts in that film. Like, we all were wearing different hats, like John Smihula. So that was my different hat, except that I was just the voiceover. If you know anything about Long Island South Shore, you'll see that all the scenes in the area are filmed along the Jones Beach and Loop Beach area. And I'll never forget it. We were filming a scene, and we were all on the side of the road. And I had this crazy-looking van, and it was all brown with this like yellow stripe around it, and this homemade top, and we were off the side of the road. John Smihula was playing his character with the bag over his head and the goggles on. I had blood because we were just in a scene. We just filmed the fight, and we were using this samurai sword. And this is the actual samurai sword that we used in that scene. That was amongst, and we found bones. It was so funny that we pulled aside. Somebody had just walked into the brushes, said, "Oh, I see some bones." And apparently, someone had been hunting and left a carcass. So we stuck this in the bones and used it as part of the filming. And this is a real Japanese samurai sword. So to make a long story short, what was happening, and as we're in the middle of shooting this scene, a state trooper comes along, and he goes, "Oh, what are you guys doing?" And Nathan runs up. He goes, "Oh, we're making a movie." And here's one guy with goggles, one guy with blood, one guy. We had John Smihula's brother Paul was a biker guy, so right away he thought we were a bunch of nuts. And Nathan ran up and he goes, "Oh, we're filming a movie." And at the time, the movie's name was Cannibal Orgy. And he goes, "Yeah, it's called Cannibal Orgy." And the cop was like, "I'll tell you what, I'll give you about 5 minutes. I'm going to turn around. And when I come back, if you guys are still here, I'm going to be bringing you all into the station." That was insane that day. And Judge Smihula almost got hit by a car in the scene when he goes running across the highway with this sword in his hand, flipping around. And on the outtake, you hear, "Eee!" That was ran him over. That was totally hilarious. To give you an example of how I enjoyed Nathan's photography, and one of the best parts was, all the guns in the film of Cannibal Massacre were real. I mean, that was a real 44 Magnum. When Josh Smihula pulls that out, and let's take every means possible. And we had, real AK-47, an M16, this huge chainsaw. And what we did is we went to an outdoor range, because we actually had the gun firing, the M16, and the shells were real. So we would shoot it from a low angle with the sky in the background, so you couldn't tell that we weren't in the same location. So he's like, "Don't worry, it'll work out. You don't have to worry about it the way I'm shooting it." And I realized how he had done it.
The other thing about Cannibal Massacre that I remember is one of the most difficult scenes that we did, and that was the "Give Me Food" scene. And we call it the "Give Me Food" scene. And we had a number of scenes like that planned for the film, but we couldn't get the personnel to play characters, to play other cannibals. But in the "Give Me Food" scene, it was one of the coldest days of the winter. The wind chill factor was below zero. The temperature was in the teens. It was just an incredibly cold day, and I'm just wearing a sweatshirt and a white shirt. And it's a very effective scene, I think. It's very atmospheric. And I come into the frame. It's a long shot, and I approach the camera, and you can't tell it's me because I have all the stuff in my hair. It turned out that Nathan and I decided to put Vaseline in my hair. We weren't thinking that Vaseline is not water soluble. So 2 days later, I'm calling him on the phone and saying, "I still can't get the Vaseline out of my hair, asshole. What can I do about this? Why'd you put Vaseline in my hair?" So eventually we had a laugh over that. But I had peanut butter and wheat germ on my face, and I play this cannibal who finds meat, starts tearing into it. But I just remember how incredibly cold it was. I almost got frostbite in my fingers. It was so cold because we're there in the snow and there's water around and blood and meat, and that was one of the more difficult scenes.
Regarding my director, Nathan Schiff, the man who made it all possible. Well, that was I enjoyed working with Nathan. One thing, I always liked his camera work and the angles that he got and the portrayals. So whenever we got the film back, we waited with bated breath to see this film, and we would always flip out, and then we hadn't even put in the music yet. So, but Nathan was always very insistent on the shots that he had to get. And some of these positions and things that we had to do, like me on the spike or whatever, And we were there for a long time, either drenched in blood or freezing cold. The only problem when Nathan and me get together is the two of us start doing the most insane things. And when we watch it coming back, we're like, you know, we're crazy. Why do we even try and do these things? Well, those chainsaw scenes, folks, that chainsaw was running. And that meat was flying. The chunks and the blood, and it was as close as it could be. There, and the only thing underneath of me was Kevlar to protect me from being cut. And I think still today, we're like, I can't believe we got away with it.